CM Punk crossed a line that nobody has ever dared to cross with The Rock, and the moment word reached the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, The Rock did not respond on social media. He did not wait for the next scheduled Raw segment. He called an emergency meeting, and every single person in that room when The Rock walked through that door knew the consequences of what CM Punk just did are going to be biblical. The Rock is not angry. Angry is something The Rock was 20 minutes ago. What The Rock is right now, after calling that emergency meeting, is something that the English language does not have a clean single word for, and CM Punk is about to feel every syllable of it. Suplex Rumble Nation, welcome back. I am your host and I need to ask you something before we go a single second further into this breakdown. In your entire experience as a wrestling fan, across every rivalry, every promo war, every moment of professional wrestling's most heated and most personal conflicts, have you ever seen The Rock call an emergency meeting? Not a scheduled confrontation. Not a planned segment. An emergency meeting, called immediately, in response to a specific, singular act of disrespect by CM Punk that apparently exceeded every threshold that the most electrifying man in sports entertainment possesses. The answer, for almost all of us, is no. Because The Rock calling an emergency meeting is not a thing that happens in the usual course of professional wrestling events. It is the specific, completely unprecedented response to something equally unprecedented. And what CM Punk did to generate this response and what The Rock's emergency meeting is going to produce in consequence is the most explosive, most significant, most WrestleMania 42 defining story in professional wrestling right now. Subscribe if you are new. Notification bell immediately. Drop a comment right now telling me, did CM Punk finally go too far? Let's go into every extraordinary layer of this together. Let's begin where this story demands we begin, with the specific act of disrespect from CM Punk that generated The Rock's emergency meeting response. Because understanding what was done, why it crossed the line it crossed, and why The Rock's reaction was what it was requires complete analytical attention to the provocation itself. CM Punk's willingness to go places that other professional wrestlers identify and walk carefully around has always been his most defining competitive quality. The best in the world's promo philosophy is built on the specific rejection of comfortable limits, on the understanding that the most effective verbal attack is always the one that reaches its target in the place they are most genuinely vulnerable rather than the place that is most acceptably aggressive within the usual parameters of competitive professional wrestling. He has deployed this philosophy against virtually every significant opponent of his career. With most of them, even the most celebrated, most institutionally significant figures in WWE history, the specific disrespect he has delivered, however intense and however personal, has been received as professional wrestling conduct, as the elevated version of competitive trash talk that the genre accommodates and often celebrates. What CM Punk did that generated The Rock's emergency meeting response was different. Different in the specific way that the most serious line crossings in professional wrestling are always different, not simply more aggressive than the usual threshold, but operating in a different category entirely. He went after something personal, not the character, not The Rock's professional wrestling record or championship history or the decisions he has made as a WWE institutional figure. Something that exists beneath all of those layers, something that connects to The Rock's identity in ways that the professional wrestling framework does not fully contain or protect. The specific nature of CM Punk's disrespect, the exact words, the exact targeting, the exact dimension of The Rock's life and identity that was addressed landed with the force of something that the most electrifying man in sports entertainment's considerable experience navigating professional wrestling conflict had not fully prepared him for. Because some things cannot be prepared for. Some specific, precisely targeted, personally devastating forms of disrespect hit differently than everything that preceded them. And when The Rock received what CM Punk said, processed it with the full weight of what it was actually addressing, the emergency meeting was not a strategic decision. It was the only available response. The Rock's immediate response to CM Punk's disrespect before the emergency meeting, in the specific minutes between receiving the information and picking up the phone to convene that gathering, is the window into what makes this situation categorically different from any previous Rock conflict in the 2026 WWE chapter. The Rock operates, in almost every professional wrestling context, with the specific combination of showmanship and strategic intelligence that has made him the most culturally significant figure professional wrestling has ever produced. His responses to provocations, however heated, however personal they appear, are almost always shaped by that combination. The showman calculates the most effective response. The strategic mind identifies the optimal moment and method of delivery. The cultural icon understands the platform implications of every public communication. That process, the calculation, the shaping, the strategic optimization, takes time, even if only seconds. Even if only the specific, rapid internal processing of someone who has been navigating high-stakes public communication for 3 decades. When CM Punk's disrespect reached The Rock, witnesses to his immediate reaction have described the same quality in his response. The specific, unmistakable quality of someone whose usual processing sequence has been bypassed completely. Whose response arrived before the calculation could occur. whose reaction was not the product of the showman or the strategist or the cultural icon but of the person, the human being beneath all of those identities, responding to something that reached him below every layer of professional construction. The Rock reaching for his phone to call the emergency meeting was not a strategic decision. It was the first available expression of a response whose scale exceeded what any individual action could contain. He needed people in a room. He needed the specific, collective presence of the Bloodline assembled around him while he processed in company rather than in isolation what CM Punk had done and what the appropriate response was going to be. The emergency meeting was The Rock needing his family. The emergency meeting that The Rock convened the specific gathering of Bloodline members and associated parties that assembled in response to his call is the most significant collective WWE gathering since the Bloodline's reunion around the GUSO situation. And its contents, what was said, what was decided, what the collective intelligence and fury of that assembled group produced is the foundation of everything that happens next. The meeting was called without the usual advance communication that scheduled gatherings involve. It was the specific urgency of an emergency, the word itself chosen deliberately, communicating to every person receiving the summons that whatever had happened required immediate collective response rather than the usual deliberate strategic planning that the Bloodline's most significant decisions normally involve. The people who assembled The Rock, Roman Reigns, members of the extended Bloodline family, and selected additional parties whose specific presence communicated something about the scope of what was being addressed arrived with the energy of people who understood, from the urgency of the summons alone, that this was a different kind of meeting. Not a strategy session, not a rivalry planning discussion, an emergency. The Rock spoke first. And witnesses to that opening the specific account of The Rock addressing the assembled room with what CM Punk had done describe a quality they had never previously witnessed from him in any WWE context. The showman was entirely absent. The strategic intelligence was present but subordinated. What spoke in that opening address was something more fundamental and more raw than either of those qualities. He explained what CM Punk had said. And the room's reaction, the specific, multi-directional, completely genuine response of people receiving information about a disrespect aimed at someone they love was itself a statement about the severity of the provocation. Roman Reigns, whose own experience of CM Punk's willingness to cross personal lines is well documented, responded with an expression that communicated immediate, complete, unified alignment with whatever The Rock decided the appropriate response was. The meeting continued for a significant period. Long enough for the initial reaction to be processed, for the collective strategic intelligence of the assembled Bloodline to assess the full landscape, and for a response to be determined that was proportional not to a professional wrestling rivalry but to the specific, genuine, personal nature of what had been done. What the meeting decided, the specific, collective response that the Bloodline assembled in emergency is going to deliver to CM Punk is coming soon. And it is going to be the most significant collective action the Bloodline has taken in the entire 2026 WWE chapter. Roman Reigns' specific role in The Rock's emergency meeting, the tribal chief's contribution to the collective response being formulated, tells its own essential story about where the Bloodline stands and where CM Punk's disrespect has placed this rivalry. Roman Reigns and CM Punk's rivalry had already been the most personally charged, most psychologically complex program in the 2026 WWE landscape before CM Punk's latest act of disrespect. The history between them, the championship programs, the verbal warfare, the physical confrontations, the Zilla Fatu debut, Solo Sikoa's Chicago Street Justice had already elevated this beyond the usual competitive heat of a WrestleMania season rivalry into something that operated at genuine